Hi, I'm Frida Wallin. I'm here with the Economist Corporate Network in Hong Kong, and we just wrapped up our Asia Intelligence Update meeting where we discussed risk management in Asia. And I'm here with Mark Johnson, the head of Asia at Herbert. So we talked a lot about the regulatory challenges in Asia. So what would you see as the biggest challenges for regulatory environment in Asia today?
I think multinationals are faced with what is effectively a sort of perfect storm of regulation, whereby you have the emerging markets introducing new regulations and increasingly enforcing those regulations, and then layered on top of that you have domestic jurisdictions such as the US and the United Kingdom and so on and so forth, which are imposing their own obligations in relation to the business of their overseas businesses of their domestic corporations. So it's the interaction of those and then trying to bring the compliance culture within the operations in Asia in line with those various regulations is, I think, the biggest challenge.
We also discussed the cross-regional jurisdictions and cross-regional regulations such as the FCPA in UK, bribery law, and how would businesses in Asia, how should they deal with these type of regulations as well?
Well, actually, if you look at the corruption compliance and regulations is actually relatively easy to deal with internally in terms of paperwork, because by and large, a breach of the FCPA is also a breach of the relevant regulations in China, a breach of the regulations in Hong Kong, and so on and so forth. So you can produce standards which deal with corruption relatively easily. I think the more difficult part is internally enforcing it in an environment where, frankly, it's very difficult to do business in certain jurisdictions without being faced with suppliers or so on and so forth who are seeking bribes. So I think that the system that can be in place is fairly easy to do. It's sort of internal compliance which is more difficult.
All right. Well, thank you, Mark, for joining us today. Hi, I'm now joined here by Matthew Hosford, who is the Managing Director and Chief Risk Officer at Banco Santander. So let me ask you about your Banco Santander's risk strategy here in Asia, because you're relatively new in Asia. So what are the things you need to think about as a businesses when coming to Asia as a new company?
Well, we focus on a number of things. First of all, Santander is not new to getting into new markets.
No.
Often, a lot of people comment how we took Latin America and went from a very small base to become the largest foreign investor in all of Latin America in a very short time. But we were there for 30 years laying groundwork and doing investigation and entering markets very cautiously and really getting a lay of the land and working as much as we could to build a local staff that could help us understand what was going on in the market. We're doing the same thing here in Asia, so it really is a requirement to be patient. In this first stage, we're working with Asian companies, but we're doing it in a way where we feel that we can add value and also that we have a greater ability to control the risk. And so while our product offering in Asia is very small, the one product we offer that where nobody else can compete is Latin America.
Yeah.
And so working with these companies who are moving into Latin America, some have been there for a long time, some are just going there, we offer a service, a truly value-added service to them that allows us to get to know them, allows them to get to know us, and allows us to manage the risk while we're doing basically our due diligence on the region, which could take a long time if our previous expansion is any guide.
Yeah. So how did you, Banco Santander, look at the upcoming year in 2012? Are you very cautious because of the situation in Europe and the US, or do you see Asia will come through this with a high growth? And so are you bullish on the prospect for Asia to continue?
As a European bank, we're caught in the crosshairs of what's going on between the uncertainty over the euro, in addition to the additional regulations that have been hitting European banks, which are forcing us to sell assets.
Yeah.
Having said that, I must point out that for Santander, Euroland is something like 25% of our entire business, and so we're quite protected between our operations in Latin America and what we have in the UK and the United States. We are selectively. We have plans to selectively expand in Asia. We would like to expand more, but it is a function of what's going on in the global economy. So we're less concerned about Asia, but we are very much trying to be balanced and measured here in order to be able to not have it cause undue stress on the other issues that we're managing back home.
All right. meeting. And I'm here with Steve Vickers, CEO of Steve Vickers and Associates. And I would like to ask you, what do you see as the main Asia-specific risks in Asia in the upcoming year? I mean, we know the external risks of a global economic slowdown, but if you look at Asia specifically, what would you see as the main risks?
I suppose from a political and security risk point of view, which is basically what I do, we're quite concerned about Thailand. The king is ailing. A Thailand post the king will be something that we haven't seen before. I think it will put the floods into, particularly, I think it's a very serious situation in Thailand over that. The political changes in China will be very interesting, and we'll be looking out to see whether as a consequence of the transition to the Xi Jinping regime, whether or not we are going to see some U-turns in policy, which could affect foreign MNCs, particularly in the, monopoly, anti-monopoly area. That's something that we think is quite interesting. Sadly, terrorism in India is a constant worry, and whilst we hope nothing will occur in that direction, we see no positive, frankly, we see no positive improvement in that area this year. Vietnam is problematical in a number of areas, and there are a number of highly laid out or highly emphasized business disputes which involve the government. And if there's a default in those, there may be some interesting aspects again in Vietnam. And that's a simple wrap up.
Well, I'm here now with Keith Stephenson, partner at PricewaterhouseCoopers, and I want to ask you about. We talked about the importance of culture in organizational management and how to deal with risk management. What do you say is the most important aspect of this in organizational management in terms of mitigating risks for businesses?
Thank you. Well, mitigating risks in Asia, the key thing is to have a risk management process in place. That process needs to make sure that key risks around projects are brought to boards at a time that they can actually control and review them. One of the biggest concerns is they don't challenge enough. We must have a greater challenge. If a company can be challenged on the way they're attacking risks, then they can look at it to work out whether they maximise their risk appetite. We're not seeing that. And certainly no one has the consistency of approach to bringing in this idea of challenge.
Right. And do you have any specific recommendations for businesses operating in Asia, specifically how to deal with what would be like the main risk management strategy that you would suggest to businesses?
Sure. I mean, one of the key things that businesses really need to do is to work out what their risk appetite is. In other words, what are the risks they're willing to take, and therefore document them. Once they've actually stated what the risks should be, their appetite, they then need to work out how they can optimise their risk profiles, how they can change the approaches to projects, how they can change their approaches to investments to actually increase opportunity whilst controlling the risk to a manageable amount. This is the reason why people need to understand their risk appetite. And we're not seeing that. We're just not seeing the education levels high enough or the intellectual ability of many companies to really get that stuff.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Keith. That was very, very informative. I'm Frida Wallin here with the Economist Corporate Network in Hong Kong, and thank you for joining us.